Hey everybody, if you're a United Financial Advisors, we're doing our second episode on legacy, and today we're going to be focusing almost entirely on Roth conversions and how Roth might affect your legacy plan. There's a lot of intricacies when it comes to when to convert, why to convert, and how to convert. And so we're going to be going over some of those details with you and what might be important, not only just for you, the tax implications that it might have, but then also for your heirs or beneficiaries and what taxes they might face because of your decisions today, or maybe in a few years, whenever it's relevant for you. So Brad here is my dad, the founder of United Financial Advisors, and he's been doing this for 22 years. And so it's really incredible. And I asked him to come and join me to hopefully share some wisdom. And so, Brad, first, could you just tell us, what a Roth conversion is, but maybe start even more basic than that with what's traditional dollars, what's Roth dollars, and what the effects tax-wise are of.
Yes, I've been a fan of Roth IRA since I was 18. Found out about them. I was smart enough to put money in it and dumb enough to take money out of it. But because one of the benefits of a Roth IRA is the money you put in, you can still take it out tax-free and penalty-free. It's just the interest that you have to pay taxes and penalties on if you pull it out early. But a Roth IRA is different than a traditional IRA because you put after-tax dollars in there and it grows tax deferred. And as long as you abide by all the rules, at 59 and a half, you take it out completely tax-free. All the gains, all the interest that's been made over the last 20, 30, 40 years comes out completely tax-free. A traditional IRA, which what most people are familiar with, is you put money in, it gets deducted from your income tax, and then at retirement, it comes out taxable as income tax rate.
So what's the base reason as to why someone would even think about doing a Roth conversion?
A Roth conversion is pretty important, and when you're talking about generational wealth, or as this podcast is focusing on legacy planning, if you want your beneficiaries to be able to inherit money tax-free, a Roth IRA is the way to do that. So you want to convert your traditional money into a Roth. You have to pay the taxes on it at that time, and you would pay the taxes instead of your beneficiaries paying the taxes.
So if you don't do a conversion, what's the implications? Say I contributed to my 401k for 40 years. It's grown to $1 million. I choose not to convert any of those dollars to Roth. What's the implication to my beneficiaries?
So you used the figure of $1 million. That's a pretty big figure because when you inherit a traditional IRA money, you have 10 years to withdraw all of those funds. So if you inherit $1 million IRA, you have to essentially take out $100,000 every year, which is going to be counted as taxable income to you, which probably, for most people, that's going to raise them into the next tax bracket.
So the other important thing to note about that is most people inherit money from their parents. And whenever your parents are likely of life expectancy age, they're probably in their 80s, maybe their 90s, they're lucky, maybe they're 70s. It's also really likely that you'll be in either your 40s, 50s, maybe early 60s whenever you inherit that money.
Which is still a young age, by the way.
Yeah,
We're just
yeah.
doing that.
But anyways, it also means that you are going to be earning the most that you'll likely ever earn. And because of that, you'll be in the highest tax brackets that you'll ever have been or ever will be. And it's at that very moment that you're going to be required to pull out of your inherited IRA, which will likely mean that whatever money that you inherited depending upon your tax bracket, 30-40% of that could be going to taxes. And so it's not a very efficient transfer of wealth. So how does a Roth conversion help with that tax burden?
So for the beneficiaries, they inherit that money tax-free, and they withdraw the money tax-free. For the now deceased, you can look at the lifespan of taxes, and paying the taxes now would be less than the lifespan overall taxes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's hard to grasp in the moment the idea of lifetime taxes and reducing your lifetime tax burden. But that's really what the main focus of Roth conversions should be, if it's not for your heirs per se. So it hurts in the moment because you're going to be raising your taxable income, which means that you're going to be paying more in taxes today. But it means that later on down the road, you might have more options and more flexibility, and you may also decrease your overall tax liability. One of the other things that's important to note is that today we know what the tax rates are. How much do you trust the people in Washington to keep the tax rates as they are forever? And so you're making a bet, and that bet is that tax rates will either stay the same or go down if you're in traditional dollars. If you're in Roth dollars, you might be able to see where the break-even point is if tax rates stay the same. And that's what assumptions have to go off of because we don't have better information. But if tax rates go up and they go up significantly, the amount of money in your traditional IRAs or your 401k will be worth a little bit less. It'll go less far because the government will be taxing it more. And they control what the tax rate is, not you, unfortunately.
Yes, Roth IRA, if you start it earlier in life, you're going to be paying taxes now on the money before you make the contributions. But the implications of a retirement and beyond of pulling that money out tax-free is huge.
Absolutely. I mean, the amount of flexibility that having tax-free income gives you is kind of difficult to put into words. But as retirement planners, whenever we see somebody with Roth assets, it helps the plan significantly because we have a lot more flexibility in how we can withdraw funds. Now, what we see most often is that somebody has a large amount of traditional dollars. So they have a large 401k that they contributed to, maybe an IRA, and that's really where 80% of their wealth, if you took away their primary residence, 80 to 90% of their wealth lies in this massive 401k that they've built over the course of their lifetime. But the issue is that it's only traditional dollars. And so we kind of have to answer the question is whenever you retire, is your tax bracket going to be lower? And if it is, then maybe we have a couple of years where we can use some Roth conversions. And then later in life, we can take from those Roth dollars because we've given them time to breathe and time to grow. So we can choose to pull from traditional dollars first and then use Roth dollars on the back end. And it lets us spend the money now that we know what the tax rate is going to be. Whereas we're kind of hedging our bets for whatever the tax rates are towards the end of our life expectancy.
You know, the prevailing thought for many years was that you get all the deductions you can get now. And some CPAs will still argue that. You take all the deductions you can now, and when you retire, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. And so over the lifespan, in that scenario, you would end up paying less taxes. But more and more people, especially baby boomers, don't want to retire less money than what they were making. They're used to spending that money and having that money. And we see people retiring all the time, making as much or even more in retirement than they were while they were working. Prevailing thought is really kind of fading away right now. But even though Roths have been around since the late 70s. They're still haven't become real popular until probably the past 10, 15 years.
Yeah, and there are some regulatory changes that have happened to kind of encourage Roth usage. The biggest one would be 401ks, including Roth. Now you even have some employers making Roth contributions. And now also, if you make catch-up contributions and you're over the age of 50, it's required that you make those catch-up contributions in Roth. Now, whether or not that was the government's way of making people put more into Roth or if it was to get them the tax bill earlier is a different conversation. But they are making Roth more widely available, which is helping people hopefully later on, but it does usually mean that the government is trying to get their tax money earlier in time.
This podcast is about legacy, but let's just take for a second talk about what the benefits of the Roth owner while they're living and you retire and you've got this income, you've got this Roth that you've built up for years. Well, that or those withdrawals, I guess is a better way to put it, is not income. It's not counted as income in different scenarios.
Yeah. So your Social Security is taxed, which I think for a lot of retirees, we sit them down and they say, yes, I want this much, a year net. And we say, well, you're going to have to take quite a bit more out than what that net is because not only are you pulling from a taxable account and that's taxed, but it drives up your taxable income, which means that your Social Security gets taxed.
Up to 75% of what your Social Security value is can be taxed.
Right. So your Social Security is going to get taxed. Your withdrawals from taxable accounts get taxed, and those all count as income. And so the way around that is that if you're pushing the next tax bracket, you can pull more from Roth dollars than traditional dollars. Or if you're also on any type of cusp of Social Security taxation, you can pull more from Roth to decrease that Social Security taxation. The issue with implementing most of these strategies isn't in their accessibility. It's just that a lot of people don't have enough in their Roth IRAs to make it to where it's possible. We do see some Roth IRAs come through, but a lot of times they might have 20,000, maybe 100. People just really haven't contributed enough money to the account to make it to where we can implement a strategy because the account can't really take any withdrawals without being emptied.
Another thing is Medicare doesn't start till 65. What if you want to retire at 61 or 62? What do you do about health insurance from that age to Medicare? You're probably going to go to the exchange website and get on the healthcare exchange. Roth withdrawals don't count as income. So if you have built a large Roth IRA and you can live off that for 3 or 4 years, then it basically shows you as zero income, which means your health insurance premiums would be really low or zero.
And they're really great tools, but I think we also want to talk about, when would Roth conversions be appropriate, or when do we see them being appropriate the most? I would probably say it's right after somebody retires. If they delay their Social Security, they can reduce their taxable income, and we can do Roth conversions in that window between when Social Security starts and when they've retired. Now, a couple things have to happen, obviously. That would mean they have to retire before age 70, which we don't see all the time. And it also means that they have to be willing to live off of a little bit less than what they were likely making.
Sometimes just a life event can happen that would lower your income for that year, for a particular year, and that'd be a great opportunity to convert some traditional money into a Roth.
Yeah, like we've seen sometimes where a spouse didn't work for half the year, and that can be a good opportunity to use that time to do a Roth conversion because it's likely the year where your taxable income is the least that it's been in a long time. So, a really weird way to say that if you became unemployed for a little bit of the year, it might actually be a good time to add taxable income.
Yeah, it can be a silver lining to that storm cloud there
Yeah.
a little bit. We've also seen it where someone had got a pretty hefty bonus every year, and then there's a year where they weren't going to get a bonus, and that was a good opportunity to do a Roth conversion.
Yeah. So any years where you have unusually low income is good opportunities to do Roth conversions. Now, explain to me, how do you actually go about doing a Roth conversion? What's the steps? What's the process? What does it look like?
So it has to come from a traditional IRA. So we have to roll it over into a traditional IRA, and then we open up the Roth account, and then we transfer the money from the traditional to the Roth in a conversion. And the form on it lets them know we're doing a conversion. And then the taxes have to be paid, preferably from another account. If you're over 59 and a half, you would pay the taxes from another account. If you're under 59 and a half, it has to come out from that account.
So if it's not withheld and you're under 59 and a half, you get an early withdrawal penalty. It'll count as both income and you'll get the 10% penalty on top of that. So if you're under 59 and a half, it's very important that you actually withhold the taxes from the IRA. Now, if you're above the age of 59 and a half, what are some of your options?
Life is better above age 59 and a half. In the financial world, 59 and a half is just a magical age. I'm not there yet, by the way.
You're close.
No, I'm not. Not that close. But it's just a better age. You have more freedom and flexibility and everything related, especially to IRAs and even traditional dollars like 401ks and things like that, depending if you're still working or you're not working. But before we finish that, are there any limits to how much you can convert?
No, there's not. There's actually been some cases of people converting millions and millions of dollars out of traditional accounts into Roth IRAs, especially if they had high conviction that the security that they were transferring was going to appreciate.
Now you're bringing up a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
Having your highly appreciated assets in your Roth IRA.
Okay, we'll come back to that. We skipped how do you actually do it. So
we did.
So we showed how to do it, but then if you're above the age of 59 and a half, there's some additional details. So if you have the ability and you have the funds available, you can choose to not withhold the taxes from your IRA during the conversion. Now there's a couple of little things that actually have to take place afterwards, some forms that have to get filed by your CPA. It's important to tell them, hey, I did this conversion, I didn't withhold any taxes. And so you're either gonna have to file form 8606 that shows that you did a Roth recharacterization or a Roth conversion. And you're also going to likely have to make estimated tax payments. So you're either going to have to make quarterly payments throughout the year, or you're going to have to make some tax payment in the quarter of which the income happened. And so there are some additional tax details that you'll have to take care of, and a CPA should be able to take you through all of that. But you just have to know that there's some additional communication that has to happen between us and the CPA, or whoever your advisor is and your CPA. Those two people need to be communicating with each other if you're going to do anything like this. Or if you're managing your assets on your own, then you definitely need to communicate with your CPA what you're doing, why you're doing, and what forms need to be filed.
Yeah, the last thing you want to do is get in trouble with the IRS.
Yeah, you can get in trouble with a lot of people, but the IRS.
Yeah, you don't want to.
Probably one of the worst.
Yeah, you don't want that one.
But we were talking about asset location, or where do you put certain types of assets. And that gets really important whenever we're talking about Roth IRAs, because Roth, you are encouraged, and really the only thing that makes a Roth tax advantage is the growth that happens in the Roth IRA.
Correct.
So tell me a little bit about that. What does that mean about the asset location, and where should we be putting specific asset types?
So we go back to the definition of a Roth. All the money you put in there, you can still get it out tax-free because it's after-tax dollars. So the real benefit of the Roth is all the gains that you make. So the longer the Roth is in there, the more gains there are, so the better the benefit it is to having a Roth. So you'd want to take advantage of that by putting your most aggressive assets, your most appreciating assets inside a Roth to let them grow and make that benefit just bigger and bigger and bigger. It comes out tax-free.
Absolutely. So we know that traditional accounts and Roth IRA accounts need to hold different types of assets. So your Roth IRA is a great place for any growth stocks. If you have a really high conviction play that you feel like is going to pay off over the long term, Roth is a great location for that, because if that does pay off, all of the gains come tax-free.
Tax-free.
And so in retirement, you'll be able to take those out, no income tax whatsoever. And that makes a big deal with your high conviction plays, the places where you would likely have the most amount of tax on them. Now, your traditional dollars, you can put things that are more income producing. You know, what do RMD percentages start at? It's right under
About 4%.
4%. So if you can generate more than 4% in a year and your RMD age, then you are at least, your account value is at least holding steady. Now those percentages do increase
Every year.
so you'll have to take out more and more. And that's actually a great transition into another Roth topic and another reason for Roth conversions. So if you map out your RMDs, especially if you've built a really, really, really hefty traditional pile of money, the government or Uncle Sam is going to come knocking at age 73, and they're going to say, you have to take out money today. And so because of that, you can raise your taxable income significantly over what you actually need to survive. You can say, well, I really don't need all of that money. Uncle Sam doesn't really care if you don't need it. They say you want to take it out, or else we'll take it.
We have a lot of people that's that way. They've done really well at saving. They have a pension or something. They've got these accounts they don't need anymore. But then 73 comes around and they have to take it out.
So a way to at least minimize that and make sure, especially that your RMDs don't knock you into the next tax bracket, is to do conversions earlier in retirement. So that way you're taking out of that traditional pile and putting it into Roth. Now, what that also does, Roth doesn't have any required minimum distributions. There's no amount that you are forced to take from a Roth. All of it is just whatever you decide to take from it. And so that also gives us more flexibility, especially after age 73, of when to take assets and how much from where, if you don't have a required minimum distribution, or if it's below what you would usually spend in a year anyways.
But if you take the reverse scenario there, and you've got somebody putting investing in bonds or CDs or things like that inside of a Roth IRA, then they're not getting hardly any benefit of the Roth. It's just not growing that much if they're being ultra conservative. And I understand people, the older they get, they want to be more conservative, but it's kind of pointless inside the Roth.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And also, a lot of people, especially whenever they're first starting to invest, or if they haven't heard of Roth before, I've even had people think of Roth as kind of like a bank account. Somebody asked me, what's the percentage on a Roth?
Yeah.
Well, it's, what the market does, we can try to aim for this to this, but there's no guarantees. And so, like, it's not like, can we just put CDs inside of it, or can I just put cash inside of it? It's like, well, yes, but that ruins the whole point. Congrats, you open up a Roth, and you'll have lost money to inflation over the course of several years. So it's really, really important that you have your at least stocks. It doesn't have to be something crazy, but it needs to at least have the ability to grow over time. Or else there's really, honestly, you might as well just put it in a non-qualified account and hold it on its own. You have better access to it there.
Now, going back to RMDs for a second, I got a story about that. A client that had all their money in traditional retirement products or investments, they retired, and then suddenly all this land that they owned that had gas wells on them started paying a gas well dividend of $100,000 a month. Yeah. And so they didn't need all this traditional money, but then they didn't retire until they were about 69. So just a few years later, they have to start taking RMDs out on top of all this money they're getting on their gas wells. It's a sad problem.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
I know everyone's heartbroken for them, but
there is something that you can do if you have RMDs and you're not using them, or you don't need the entire RMD. So you can do what's called a qualified charitable distribution, or a QCD. And what this does is it basically cuts out the middleman, and that's Uncle Sam. And so assets can go straight from your IRA to a qualified charity, and it can count as your RMD for that year. So the benefit is that, especially if you're not going to spend your entire RMD, you can send a QCD, or qualified charitable distribution, first, and then the remainder of what's left of your RMD you can spend if you'd like, or you can donate the entire RMD if you need it. It really just depends on what financial situation you're in yourself, and then you can adjust how much qualified charitable distributions you want to make, if you make any. But it allows people a way to donate to charity and avoid the pesky tax that Uncle Sam is putting on them for taking from their retirement account.
is there a tax that's not a pesky tax?
I don't think so.
I think everyone kind of thinks all taxes are pesky. So we talked about the benefits of the Roth being inherited. And then the other side of that story is if you inherit a traditional account, 401k, IRA, the rules are different. I don't think we described that specifically.
Yeah, we talked about the 10-year rule. So you have to spend it all within 10 years.
We did talk about the income being jumped up
and
next tax
it'll
bracket.
jump up your income. Yeah. Roth it's a little weird because they still require you to take it out in 10 years.
Is that just because they want you to spend it?
I don't know. I mean, you can't.
It's one of those quizzical things that the government does. It's why? What's the point of that?
Yeah. Something else that we run into every once in a while is someone has an inherited IRA and they want to contribute to their Roth IRA. And they're like, well, can we just convert it? And so you can't do Roth conversions from an inherited IRA. You have to take it, put it into another account, pay the taxes on it, and then contribute to the Roth. So that's the other thing. It counts as your contribution for the year. So it's not an unlimited amount. It's whatever is left of your contribution, which is being recorded in 2025. So the limit is $7,000 if you're under the age of 50, or $8,000 if you're above. And in 2026, we're going to see a $500 increase, so $7,500 and $8,500.
So I guess the reason the government, although it makes sense for us to just convert from the inherited IRA, since it's a traditional IRA, that it's yours, convert it to a Roth, but the government really wants their taxes to be received first. and then they'll let you contribute that to a Roth. That's a very interesting thing that's in the laws as well.
Just the ability that you can't contribute directly to the account.
Yeah.
Even though, so in like the most recent case that I can think of, we just had a third account made, and so we transferred the funds from this account to a non-qualified account, then from the non-qualified account to the Roth account. So all it did was make us open up another account. Like it really didn't change the process any. There wasn't.
It just limited the amount we could put in there.
Right. It's kind of like backdoor Roths.
Yeah.
Like there's not really like a good reason why other than to trip you up. So backdoor Roths are especially useful for younger people who want to contribute to Roth but make too much money. So if you're making jointly over $250,000 a year, you're likely going to have to do a backdoor Roth. It might not be exactly 250,000, somewhere around there. But if that's the case, then you can't contribute directly to a Roth IRA. Now, what does that mean that you have to do? Well, you have to contribute non-deductibly to a traditional IRA and then do a Roth conversion into a Roth IRA. Now, what did we practically do? We just had to create a traditional account to then funnel money into a Roth account. You have to file Form 8606, the same form, just tracking that non-deductible contribution. But that's really it. It just creates another signature and another step, but there's not. You might be able to enlighten me, but I don't understand the reason. I feel like you should just be able to contribute directly to a Roth, like especially if the government has said, yes, you can do this. You can make non-deductible contributions to an IRA and then convert them. If they don't want you to contribute to a Roth, why not cut it off? Don't allow it.
You asking me to explain the government?
I am. Let me give me an explanation, because I just don't understand why the complexity for no reason.
Another common question we get is why 59 and a half and not 59 or 60? Why is it the half? There is an actuarial reason for it. I just don't remember what it was. I heard about it a couple times 20 years ago. Like, I guess it really doesn't make that much sense.
I always just thought of it as government being government.
Well, it is, but there was actually a reason why they picked the half and why RMDs used to be 70 and a half. But then, they finally got smart and just made it 73. In exchange for that, they cut the inheritance IRA to 10 years. Whereas before 2019, if someone inherited an IRA, you had your own RMD based on your own lifespan. So if you inherit that same $1 million and you're only 45 years old and your life expectancy is about 82, then it would be stretched out over your lifespan instead of having to take it in 10 years. So the government giveth by saying, well, you don't have to do your RMDs until 73, and the government taketh away by saying, we're going to shorten this way down here to just 10 years so we can get those taxes sooner.
Which I once worked with an advisor that called the 10-year IRAs the biggest tax theft of the generation. I mean, he was very against the idea of forcing people to take those in 10 years because of when they would inherit it or likely inherit it, which was in their highest earning years. Yep. And they pay the most amount of tax on it, and you couldn't stretch. Now, spouses can.
Correct. That's a good point. Yes. So if your spouse passes away, you have the option of just making their IRAs your IRAs. And then it's just like it was yours and you contributed to it. You don't have to take it out ever. But they also have the option of leaving it as an inherited IRA and taking it out in 10 years. Why would someone want to do that?
I don't know. Why would they? Oh,
That was a loaded question.
if they're under the age of 59 and a half.
Yes. Yes. So,
Yeah.
unfortunately, there have been instances where, spouses have unexpectedly died young, and we talk to their surviving spouse, and we don't know, their finances. They're in their working years. They're not in the making the most money that they're ever going to make. Yeah, they still have bills. They still have kids at home. And so they don't know if they're going to need that money or not. Or sometimes we know they're going to need that money. So we keep it as an inherited IRA and let them start taking withdrawals, and they avoid that 10% penalty. So what have we not discussed about Roth IRAs yet?
Well,
We talked about what a Roth IRA is. We talked about the benefits of the Roth IRA. We've talked about a Roth IRA conversion. We've talked about income or withdrawals not counting as income. Now, what else would there be about a legacy regarding a Roth IRA?
the 5-year rules.
Yeah.
There's two 5-year rules. One is that to take out the earnings of a Roth IRA, you have to have participated in Roth, that Roth as a program, for at least 5 years.
Right.
So even if you open up the account after, so say you open up an account at age 60, you still can't take the earnings out until you're 65.
Correct. So even if you open up a Roth IRA at Fidelity when you're 40, and then at 50, you move that Roth IRA to Van Campen, you've still been in the Roth for 10 years. So it still counts. It doesn't have to start a new 5-year period.
So there's two 5-year rules. One is that to take from the earnings of a Roth IRA, you have to have participated in the Roth program for at least 5 years. So even if you open up a Roth at the age of 60, it's not until 65 that you can actually take from the earnings of the Roth.
Correct.
So you put in $1 at the age of 20, and then you forgot about it for 40 years, you can still fund a Roth and then take from the earnings. And then the second rule for a Roth IRA is that you can't take from the Roth conversion for 5 years if you're under the age of 59 and a half. So this is to prevent people from taking a large amount of traditional money, rolling it over into Roth, and then pulling it all out. So if they did that, they'd be able to basically pay the taxes and then take money out without paying the 10% penalty that you would usually see. So instead, they require you to at least wait 5 years to get the money that you put into the Roth conversion. Now, if you're above the age of 59 and a half, this isn't an issue. Once money is in Roth, you can use it. Just make sure you participated in Roth for at least 5 years. So it is a good idea, at least to some extent, if you think that Roth is going to be in your future at all, which it should, to open up a Roth account. If you don't have a lot of money at the moment, just fund it with whatever the minimum is, $20, whatever. Participate in Roth so that we don't have to worry about the 5-year rule later on in your retirement. Even if you forget about that $25 and then 10 years down the road, you can now participate in Roth, whereas if you didn't do anything at all, we really have to struggle with the 5-year rule because you may not really be able to use those funds even if we did Roth conversions.
Right. Yeah, that's a big thing to consider when you're converting a Roth.
If you didn't participate, you got to wait 5 years. Now, you can get your principal back. That's only if you're contributing. You can't do a Roth conversion and then pull from it in the same way if you haven't participated in Roth for 5 years.
Now, there was a point in my career where I was telling people I was surprised that the government has allowed Roth IRAs to continue, because I really feel like it's that good of a deal for us, for people. But not only have they kept it, as you mentioned before, they've expanded it and encouraged it. You used to could not have a Roth inside a 401k. Then they added that. And now all your catch-up contributions have to go into a Roth. They're not only allowing it, they're encouraging and they're pushing it.
Simple IRAs can now have Roth components. SEPs, which we found out just recently. Now, not a lot of places actually have the availability or the structure and infrastructure to have a Roth SEP, but it is allowed. And so, I mean, I'll believe it when I see it, but it is technically allowed. And it was the same thing for the simple IRAs. It takes these companies a little bit to actually build out the structure and the compliance to use these new features. But that was a big one that has come out recently. And the other thing is high earners can't contribute directly to a Roth. We talked about this. And even when they can, you still have the same IRA limits. So like I said, this is 2025, so 7,000 if you're below the age of 50 and 8,000 if you're above the age of 50. And so if you're a married couple, you can get, if you're above the age of 50, 16,000 of backdoor Roth money, or 14 if you're below the age of 50. What actually is even better is if you have a Roth 401k, today you can put $23,500 into a Roth 401k. And there's an additional catch-up contribution on top of that if you're above the age of 50. And they came out with the, what do you want to call it, the bonus catch-up contribution if you're between the ages of 60 and 63. Now, the weird part is after age 63, it bumps back down to the normal catch-up contribution. But if you're in between those ages, you get an additional catch-up contribution given to you. And all that has to be made in Roth.
So I have maybe a hypothetical question, or looking into the future. So 40 years from now, I won't care. I'll be in my 90s if I'm here. But if you have all these people for 40 years contributing to Roths instead of traditional, what's going to happen when they're withdrawing all this money tax-free?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I mean, I hope nothing, because I have a Roth.
I have a feeling if there is a major shift in income taxes being received from the government, I've got a feeling something's going to change, and I don't know what. I don't know how they'd fix it.
I feel like
I don't think they're worried about it yet.
I feel like they probably wouldn't just take away the program.
No, I don't think
Or
they will.
it also likely wouldn't affect people that hold Roths. My guess is that they tax the inheritors of Roth IRAs. Like, I don't know, maybe the earnings get taxed on withdrawal.
It's just
You're
something
an
to kind
inherited
of think
Roth.
about. If they're creating a problem down the road, it's just
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, a lot of our job is figuring out what risks are there associated with doing anything. How do we quantify the risks that we're taking, and how do we mitigate the risk? So a lot of it is, how do we figure out what risks there might be later on down the road, whether that be political risk or even investment risk, where there's underperformance, or there's hyperinflation, or there's deflation or stagflation, or the currency becomes devalued. All these things are questions that we have to ask because the risks that are pertinent to people's situation. And so we'll run through these hypothetical situations, just like if taxes increase, what does that look like for somebody's retirement? Is that going to mess them up? And so we're kind of in the job of risk management. And that's also part of the whole idea of having a financial plan, is how do we mitigate certain risks and make sure that, it doesn't mean not taking any risks, It just means taking calculated risks when necessary, and most importantly, when we're rewarded for taking them.
So, do you think that maybe 2026, with the taxes, the big beautiful bill really taking into effect, is a good time to do Roth conversions?
I think the permanence, and I'll put it in quotation marks, the permanence of the Tax Cuts and Job Act and those tax brackets mean for some really wide brackets, especially if you're in those 20% range, there's a big jump from 12 to 22. So it's what, 10, 12, 22, 24? So there's a big jump between 12 and 22%. But if you're already in the 22%, that next 2% really isn't that big of a deal either. But the next jump from 24 to 32 is a really big jump.
Deal.
But it's also a wide bracket. And so if you're in that 22 to 24% marginal tax bracket, you have a lot of flexibility. But we want to make sure that you don't rise yourself into that next tax bracket, because that is going to give you a little bit more heartburn than 22 and 24%.
You're right.
And so with the permanence of these wider tax brackets, it is important to take the opportunity while we know. And the worst case scenario is really, think about this from a risk perspective. What's the worst case scenario? You do Roth conversions now, and then they lower taxes in the future. And whenever you retire, taxes are actually lower than they were whenever you did the Roth conversion. That's the biggest risk. How likely do we think that risk is?
Exactly. Not very likely.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's totally possible, and maybe people will watch this video 20 years from now and say, wow, look at those idiots.
Be laughing at us.
Yeah, we lowered the income tax to 0 and they paid 32% taxes just to get money into Roth, or 24, whatever it is. And I just waited and now I don't have any income tax. I'm probably willing to take that bet. I think I can take the bet that that won't be the case, and that taxes will likely either be the same or maybe even higher.
Yeah. I'm not going to take the chance that tariffs are going to replace income tax. So
Yeah, I don't
think we're pretty safe on that.
That's likely. I don't think that the income tax is going to go away anytime soon. Government doesn't usually take away taxes. If anything, they add taxes.
Right.
Now, what we have seen is that the highest marginal tax bracket has significantly decreased over time, over the last 80 years. So ever since World War II, highest marginal tax bracket was in the 90s. And then since then, it's been lowered, and now the highest marginal tax bracket is 37. But at the same time, our national debt has exploded, and being able to pay for that national debt, that cost has exploded, while also the dollar has consistently declined in value. So with all of those being the case, it's probably not a crazy assumption to think that taxes might increase in the future, especially if we're having to think about changing Social Security benefits or Medicare and Medicaid benefits. People aren't typically happy about their retirement, basically a pension fund, being taken away or changed at all. Whether that be, first, they likely won't take Social Security away. The first step will be maybe your benefit is less, or your age is pushed back a little bit. Maybe they have higher penalties for pulling early, or they give less credit for delaying. Those are some possibilities, but I don't think it's going to go away. At least at first. And it's going to be really hard for somebody to campaign on, I'm going to take your Social Security away from you.
Exactly. Nobody wants to be in office when that happens.
Yeah. And there are a surprising amount of people, there are a lot of people that live almost entirely off of Social Security. They didn't save during their working years, and so now they live off of Social Security and maybe their part-time job. And so if that safety net isn't in place, it might cause more issues than people think. But that's just my 2 cents.
So I'm going to ask you for 2 more cents.
Okay.
So we're talking about taxes, and we're talking about people who are high earners, but they've been converting Roth into Roths, and they still have high earners. Does a Roth offset any chance of an AMT? If there's a way you
Roth
could,
isn't counted as income at all. So
so even in the AMT configuration or calculation, they don't consider any Roth withdrawals as income either.
no,
I believe you're right.
not income. So it wouldn't be counted as AMT.
So if you were borderline of having to pay AMT and you're over 59 and a half, then you could withdraw more Roth and less other.
Yeah. But also people who are subject to AMT are usually going through aggressive tax deductions. It's usually what causes AMT. And so there are definitely cases where people are subject to that, especially if they have ISOs, they have stock options, then being subject to AMT might make a lot of sense. If you work at a company where the stock price has actually appreciated quite a bit and you own ISOs or incentive stock options and you actually have a qualifying disposition, which would mean that you wait a year to exercise, at least a year to exercise the option, and you wait at least a year to sell the stock, and you have a qualifying disposition. The difference between where your strike price is and where the stock price was whenever you actually exercise the option goes into a AMT calculation, and that's where you can see a lot of people subject to AMT. Is because of those stock options. And they do that because ISOs actually have a tax benefit. And so you're getting long-term capital gains and you're not having to pay income tax on that if there's if there's a qualifying disposition where you're doing all the things that you need to, then you get long-term capital gains treatment. Now, what we see a lot with RSUs or even NQSOs or anything like that is they're taxed at regular ordinary income. And the biggest problem that we see with being taxed at ordinary income, because the withholding is only 22% for federal, and I've seen 7 for state. It can depend on your employer. Sometimes you can change the withholding, but a lot of times those big bonuses that you get in restricted stock units or non-qualified stock options are under withheld. And so people can come up with a big tax bill in April if they don't actually make plans for what happens today. Very off topic of Roth conversions and everything, but it still is pertinent to the tax question. And how do we at least minimize our lifetime tax burden as best we can?
In that case would be if they're over 59 and a half.
Yeah, for the AMT.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you could technically, take your contributions even earlier, but you really want to avoid taking your contributions from Roth IRA because it's going to hurt the compounding. You need to let your retirement accounts breathe. I've seen someone say that they use their Roth IRA as their savings account. They say, what purpose does a savings account have? I can just use my Roth IRA. I do not think that is a good idea, partly because exactly like we talked about before with asset location, everything inside of your Roth should be maximized for growth, especially if you're young. Now, if you're older, then that's when we start pulling back a little bit and maybe we want to worry about volatility and what the market will do and make sure that whenever you retire, those funds are available to you. But especially if you're 10, 15 years out from retirement or more, you really don't want to be pulling from your Roth every 5 seconds. I mean, I think you have some experience with this.
Yes. And, you can take a qualified withdrawal from a Roth for a first time home purchase and for college.
Up to $10,000 for the home
Can.
purchase.
But I typically tell people it's your retirement account. You need to let your retirement account grow and save it for retirement. If you want to pay for your kids' college, I would recommend another educational plan. But I like the idea of having your retirement account be your retirement account and just leave it alone and let it grow.
Now, that does actually make a nice segue into a new Secure 2.0. I say new. Secure 2.0 was definitely more than a few years ago now. But people are still kind of figuring out the 529 to Roth conversion.
Yeah.
And so it was actually really good timing because I just did a 529 to Roth conversion myself. From 529's.
You're welcome.
Sorry, yeah, thank you. Thank you. So in this case, I had funds from a 529 plan, and it was older than 15 years, and the contributions were more than 5 years old, and I'm out of college.
Well, let's back up there. You went to college and was thinking you're going to become a lawyer. Thank goodness he didn't. But we were saving that 529 for law school.
Right.
So, and you got good scholarships, so we really had to pay very little out of pocket, as especially each year got better. So we could save it, but that's why you still end up having it. And then we find out that it can be converted to a Roth and start your own retirement account.
Yeah, as much as we'd like to take credit for planning that 10 years ago, that we just knew that I was going to convert that to Roth. It wasn't available 10 years ago.
Right.
So, but what happened is instead, now it does count as your contribution for the year. So that is something you can't contribute the max to your Roth IRA and then also roll over 529 funds. And the other additional detail is that you can only roll over $35,000 over the course of your entire lifespan.
Yeah.
So if your 529 plan has more than $35,000 in it, you kind of have an issue if those funds are unused. So you either need to spend it on your own education, which the Big Beautiful Bill did actually expand what you can spend 529 account money on. So now you can spend it on professional designations and certifications,
trade school, technicals.
schools. So you can spend it on a much larger array of institutions and education, but you either got to really just spend it, or you can change the name of the beneficiary.
Or pay the taxes and penalties.
Or you can pay the taxes and penalties and just pull it out. Mm-hmm. And it used to be that was really the only option.
But I'm a big fan of the 529 Roth. It's a good thing that they did. I'm glad they did it, because a 529, there's so many different questions of whether your child, at the age of 3, 4, 5, 7, whatever age you decide to start a 529, you got questions about, well, what if my child doesn't go to college? Or what if they get a full ride scholarships? Or what if they only go for a couple of years and then they stop and they still have all this money in there? In the past, we had to tell them, well, you could just change beneficiaries, or you could go back to school and learn something, or, all the scenarios we just gave, the options. But now you can tell them, hey, after that, you've had that account for 15 years. If they still have money in there, just convert it to their own Roth IRA, and they can get started on their retirement plan much earlier than most anybody else did.
Yeah, no, it is a really, really big help whenever you're first getting started. And most 20-year-olds or even some 25-year-olds aren't maxing out their Roth every year, vast majority of them. And so if you're able to kind of max out the Roth for a few years, while they're getting their footing really, really helps. And it does tie into legacy because I think one, you're giving to the next generation, making sure that they're on their feet, and also that they're educating themselves. But even then, whenever you roll it over into a Roth, that's money that they're really not supposed to touch until they're 59 and a half. But the best thing about investing and the people who are the best at it aren't necessarily the people that traded the most. They're the people that were just there the longest. And so having funds that could potentially be invested for 59 and a half years. I mean, you could open a 529 plan, right as someone's born, right as they have a social security number. I mean, technically you could open it for yourself and then change it to them in a beneficiary if you wanted to, and even start before they were born. If you really wanted to get after it. And but like I said, the biggest differentiator for who has enough money in retirement and who's well prepared is going to be the people who invested the longest and invested consistently, and it was at least a somewhat sizable portion of their income. If you do that, probably going to be successful.
We've come full circle to talk back about legacy planning, and it's pretty neat that we ended on the 529 to Roth conversion, because 529, something else you think of as anybody in the family can contribute to that.
Or not.
Right. But I mean, like a grandparent can contribute to the grandchild's 529. Talking about, leaving a legacy and helping them. So it's not just the parent, and the grandparents, aunts, uncles, the parents, anybody can contribute to a child's 529. And then if they don't use it, don't need it, they can put it into their Roth IRA, and those funds can be there, like you said, for a long time and grow.
Yeah. Also, the longer the funds are invested, the less you have to invest. So the earlier you get started, the less that you need to actually achieve their goal. Now, what we do see sometimes is you always say this in a meeting, is that the average age for somebody to first see a financial advisor is what?
The age I am right now.
55. And so what we, usually don't want someone to come in at 55 with nothing saved and say, oh yeah, I think I have $50 a month that I can save for my retirement. Do you think that's good?
Yeah, that's not a good scenario.
So, I mean, you can invest for 10 years, go from age 55 to 65, but you need to be putting
A lot.
a lot. And I think people grossly misunderstand how expensive it is to pay yourself when you're not earning income.
Or be able to retire with very low income.
Yes.
Is the other option there.
Yes. And so people just have a misunderstanding of the immense costs that retirement is. And so a lot of times they either get started late or they save a lot less. If your work sponsored plan matches 3%, putting in 3% probably isn't enough to get you to retirement. You really need to be contributing 5, 6, 7, 8% to make it to where you have a sizable amount of money. And higher contribution matches do encourage that, but it's really your responsibility to take that on yourself to save more and save the appropriate amount for your retirement.
Now, there's something else about legacy that we can address. And going back to the 529, I know people that it's very important for them to want to pay for their child's college. They really want their children to go to college. But I do caution them, don't sacrifice your own retirement and your own situation just to get your kid through college, because your children are probably going to need you well beyond college when they get out of college. And so you need to be in the financial situation to where, yeah, you can help them in college, but you can help them beyond. So don't sacrifice your retirement and put everything in their 529 account that they may or may not need for 50 years. And then you can't retire at the age you want to retire on. I use the story of on the airplane when they're doing the safety spill. They say when there's a lack of oxygen in the plane, the mask will come down, and what do they tell you to do?
Put your own mask on first.
Put it on you first, and then you can help others. And so I do the same thing with finances. You need to take care of yourself first, and it'll help you for the rest of your life to be able to take care of others.
I really think that's probably one of the most important parts about legacy planning. We talk about legacy as giving to others or leaving something behind. But sometimes the best thing that you could do for your own legacy is to take care of yourself.
Absolutely.
And take care of what you need, both for your retirement, but also mentally, physically, spiritually. All of these things are going to make you better and also make the legacy that you leave behind better. And so that's going to be it for Brad and Brad. But if you guys have any questions, always our website link will be below, and so will our calendar links. If you'd like to schedule a meeting, we always do complimentary 30-minute meetings just to meet us, talk with us, and see if there's ever a fit that makes sense. But thanks.
Yep, thank you.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Osaic Wealth Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Osaic Wealth is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Osaic Wealth.